So it's Danny Flexen here for Seconds Out. Delighted to be joined by Matchroom CEO Frank Smith, taking a well-deserved break after an incredibly busy and fruitful 2023. How's it all going?
Yeah, all good, mate. All good. Enjoying some sunshine, but back to it. Calls have started. You know, you had the nice period between Christmas and New Year where people leave you alone, but it's back to normal. But yeah, all good and looking forward to an exciting and even bigger 2024.
I can't remember the last time an Anthony Joshua fight was announced so soon after his previous outing. What's the thinking behind that? Is that driven by Saudi, or is it him and his team wanting to get back out quickly? What's the thinking?
A bit of both. You know, the key has been for AJ ever since he was on sort of this comeback trail, really, when it started back, you know, with the first fight back in April, was momentum and keep him busy. This will be his fourth fight in 11 months, I think, you know, from which he hasn't done. I think he had one fight a year in 2019 or 2021 and 22. And it's exactly what he needs. And yeah, look, as well, obviously the Saudi, you know, and the General Entertainment Authority and His Excellency were pushing for a strong schedule and hence getting that event out. But yeah, great to keep him active and exactly what he needs.
And is it, has been rumoured, March the 8th? They're saying it's not the 9th because that's the Saudi Grand Prix on the Saturday.
I'm not saying anything. I'm sticking to what we know of Joshua Ngannou signed, and there's a press conference next week for more details to come out from there.
Well,
I always say when I'm not the man to get the real info out of.
Well, yeah, we'll track Eddie down. We'll ask him at the press conference. I imagine everyone will know the date by then.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah, you would hope. When Eddie was talking, I think it was last week, he said there were three names they were negotiating with for Joshua's next fight, and that was Filip Hrgovic, Zhilei Zhang, and Francis Ngannou. From the Matchroom point of view, why was it Ngannou who won the race, if you like?
I think, look, Ngannou is probably the biggest fight out there from an exposure perspective right now. You know, he's coming off the back of that fight against Tyson Fury that no one gave him a chance in, and put in the performance he did. And, you know, AJ can go in there and win so many plaudits off the back of this as well. And look, it's a massive fight. It's a massive fight. You got two guys going in there who are, you know, you've seen the way they're built and they're going to be up against each other. It's going to be the social media reaction to it's been huge. And I think, you know, we all know AJ's focus is as well to become a world champion again. Those belts are obviously tied up right now with the Usyk Fury fight. And I believe there's two fights there, win, lose or draw for each of those guys. So as soon as the belts are available, I think we'll be challenging for world title, or he'll be challenging for world titles. But right now it was about making the biggest possible fight, and that was Francis Ngannou.
And there's a narrative out there that there's been some criticism of AJ for taking on Ngannou where there wasn't criticism of Tyson Fury for doing the same thing. To what extent do you agree with that?
Yeah, look, I think I've been quite open around it. AJ's been criticised his whole career, throughout his career. You know, everyone judges everything he does, everything he says, every fight he takes. And that's so be it. That's not going to change. It's never going to change. I think he's focused on his own career and what he wants to do. You're not going to take away from those critics. And I think, you know, more people should actually be going, well, look at what he did against Tyson Fury. I was quite open with my opinion with the Tyson Fury fight was Tyson Fury should have beaten Francis Ngannou more convincingly than that. I think, you know, because of his boxing skill and, you know, his pedigree in the sport. He didn't have the best night of his career, and Francis Ngannou did. I think AJ is going to come in with a much better performance than Tyson Fury. I think you're going to see a tremendous win for him. But yeah, it's part and parcel of being Anthony Joshua. I think he's used to that criticism.
Is that another factor in picking Ngannou for the next fight? You know, AJ's just dominated Otto Wallin, who gave Fury a hard time, and now he goes up against someone else who's gone life and death with Tyson Fury. Is it that measuring stick aspect? Is that part of it?
I don't think so. I think, look, honestly, this is, like I say, it is the biggest commercial fight out there right now. You know, obviously we were very much focused on the Deontay Wilder fight. He didn't get the win against Joseph Parker that he was looking for. And this was probably the biggest fight out there outside of that Deontay Wilder fight right now. So it's not really to compare the two. I personally believe all these heavyweights on their best day, they can each beat each other. you know, so it's not like a measuring stick of one against the other. I think it's just a case of the best fight possible.
And Eamon said on the live show last night that he expects Ngannou to give AJ a tougher fight than Otto Wallin did. And a lot of the fans on the live show are contributing on the live chat were saying they expect Ngannou to knock out AJ, which surprised me that we put a poll up and it was quite 50-50, you know, or close to. How much of a risk, you know, taking off the promoter's hat for a moment, not specifically that hat, but how much of a risk is Francis Ngannou?
I think anyone who's that weight and built like that can knock you out. That's the reality of it. And that's what I say about, you know, not every weight, but in heavyweight boxing, the best will beat each other on their night and catch them with a big shot. It's a dangerous sport. It's a dangerous game, the heavyweight division. And yeah, that is the worry always. But I think AJ's shown a lot of improvements. I think in the Otto Wallin fight, he showed a huge amount of improvements. And I think activity's been key for that. And I think you're seeing the old Anthony Joshua.
You say activity's been the key for that. What about linking up with Ben Davison, who we saw for the last fight, presumably will be in the corner for Ngannou as well? Not for Ngannou specifically, that would be weird. What do you make of that link up and the results of it so far?
I think it's amazing that, you know, the bond and relationship they built in such a short space of time. I think what, you know, Ben, Leigh, Barry and the team do is tremendous. And, you know, it's not the data side of boxing is something that, unlike every other sport, which has just become the norm, you know, in football especially, data's not really used enough in boxing. And that's what those guys focus on. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of other things they do, but that is a big part of their game plan. And, you know, you only have to look at the fighters they've worked with over the last few years and what those other fighters have gone on to do as well. You know, it works. But I think the biggest thing is the relationship factor. You know, you can be very good and have all of this, but if you don't build a relationship and a bond, it's irrelevant. So I think that's been the key for me, is seeing that, you know, and that's just been built over the last few months. And, you know, we'll see what happens from here, but it was a tremendous performance and, you know, a positive way of moving forward, that relationship.
You said earlier you expect Fury and Usyk to clash twice. The first one's on February the 17th. If that happens, the IBF are expected to take the title from Fury because they've got the mandatory contender in Filip Hrgović waiting in the wings. Would you then expect AJ, assuming all goes well against Ngannou, to face Hrgović sometime later this year?
Yeah, look, obviously AJ is very highly ranked with the IBF. He was number 3, just beat the number 2 in Otto Wallin. So that's definitely a fight. And like I say, the route would be great to get him that shot at another world title, become a three-time world champion, and then sets up, you know, potentially a huge undisputed clash against the winner of Fury Usyk, or if there is a rematch of that, the winner of that fight, the second one. And that's, you know, that's what we want to see. And look, I'm going to be honest, we all want to see the Joshua Fury fight at some point. And if that's the end of 24, early part of 25, you know, there's a lot to look forward to in the division.
Would you be disappointed if Usyk comes through against Fury? Because obviously AJ's lost to him twice. That doesn't mean that will be repeated a third time, but it's a harder sell as well. It's not an all-British fight, and it's someone he has lost to a couple of times previously.
Look, I think it's quite the Joshua Fury fight is a massive fight for the sport. You know, you can't hide away from that. At the same time, Usyk's built a tremendous fan base for himself on it with the career he's had and what he's done in the sport of boxing. I think, you know, you saw the improvements in that second fight from Anthony Joshua against Usyk. He definitely improved. It was a closer fight the second time round. So, you know, I'd be interested in seeing him fight Usyk again. But definitely, look, the big one we want to make is Fury. So let's see how things play out. And, you know, it doesn't just mean win, lose or draw. This person loses, that fights don't happen. You know, we've seen that over the last few years. Things can change in the sport, and if a fight's still being called for, it can still be big.
And aside from what you want to happen, what do you expect to happen in the Fury-Usyk fight?
Honestly, I'm not the tactician. I'd hope, as a fellow Brit, you know, you got to support Tyson Fury. I think it's a tremendous fight. Like I say, Alexander Usyk, pound for pound, he's got to be up there in the top 3 or 4 in the sport right now in what he's done, both cruiserweight and heavyweight. So I'm just looking forward to the fight. I haven't got a clue about tactics, though, Danny. I just sit back and watch it, and I can't score a fight to save my life. But it's going to be a brilliant fight, and one we've looked forward to for a long time. That undisputed heavyweight championship hasn't been delivered for a long time. It's here, and we should all celebrate it.
You've got Conor Benn coming back early February as well against Peter Dobson out in the US. Aside from just being delighted he's back in the ring, how disappointed, if at all, are you that Eubank fight couldn't get across the line? Commercially huge.
Yeah, look, very happy that Conor's back. He's had a tough period. He obviously boxed in September, but before that, hadn't boxed in 17 months. So again, activity is going to be the key for him now at his age. He's got to stay busy, and he's got big fights ahead of him. Obviously, the Eubank fight, disappointed it didn't get made. It doesn't mean it can't get made in the future, but let's see. That's not the focus right now. The focus is Feb 3rd, and then we have to work on a big fight from there. That naturally is a massive, massive fight, and one we want to make. We couldn't have done any more, is the reality. I think we pushed it to the limit. We pushed it to the limit, both with time and financially. It would be a different story if I was sitting here saying, actually, we could have paid a bit more, could have done it. We did everything we could. And for whatever reason, it didn't happen, and we have to move on.
Is that kind of mitigated by a little bit of relief that you don't have to, I don't know, go to battle with the board over that side of things as well? That's now parked for another day, if at all.
Yeah, look, it's all like you say, it's hypothetical, all these things, until you have to deal with the situation. Our focus is to keep Conor Benn active. He's not suspended. He's got no suspension, whether in the UK or internationally. There should be no reason why he can't box. Obviously, if that situation changes, if he was suspended, it's a different story. But yeah, it's one of those that we have to deal with as and when the case arises. Right now, obviously, we're set for Las Vegas on February 3rd. And we were obviously working on plans for what's next for him after this. He wants the biggest fights. He still wants to fight Eubank, but he wants the biggest fights out there, whether that be at 147, maybe 154. But, right now, I think the focus will be 147.
And we are starting a new year, of course. How would you kind of sum up 2023 for Matchroom? How did the company change and evolve during the last 12 months?
Look, I think we had a tremendous year. I think the latter part of the year, the last 6 months of the year, was delivering an amazing schedule. And we did something like 33 or 34 events last year. We're looking to top that this year. We signed some new deals internationally last year as well, which kick off this part of the year. I think it was a great year for boxing, not just for Matchroom, but I think some of the biggest fights in the sports were delivered. PBC did a tremendous job delivering some brilliant fights, the likes of Crawford Spence as well. A fight that a lot of people were looking forward to. And I'm excited for next year. I think the positive relationship between us and Queensbury is only going to be beneficial for the sport as well. And making fights and taking that barrier down. At the end of the day, we're always going to be competitors. It's our business, but it doesn't mean if something makes sense, if a deal makes sense, that we're going to stand in the way of it. And I think that was a positive as well for 2023. But as a business for Matchroom, I think it was like I say, a great year. Lots of learnings. We had to deal with a lot of problems from the previous year, especially with the Conor Benn situation. And I feel like we're through the other side of that now, and can very much focus on keep building the sport and growing the sport globally.
Did you get your own kind of private handshake meeting with Frank Warren? We know Eddie did, of course, and you guys have said some stuff about each other in the past. Would have been an interesting one as well.
Yeah, I spent some time. Look, obviously, I dealt with George quite a bit, in the build up to that, and historically as well, had some good dealings with him. And that was the first time I'd met Frank a few years back before that, but just on the road somewhere in London, I think we bumped into each other. But this was the first time we'd actually spent time together, and yeah, it was good. I should have made him some green tea. I'm good at green tea. He likes green tea, I've heard. So, but no, it was good. It was beneficial. And at the end of the day, we all say things on these interviews, very much sometimes pushed not necessarily by you, Danny, but like it's a narrative and a story that everyone likes to keep playing out. And sometimes you say things about someone, and it's never personal. It's all a bit of fun and games. You know, he said I was a vampire, and I can look like a vampire, or whatever it was. But no, it was good, and it was yeah, we spent some time, and it was a good laugh.
On that note, you did see some of the kind of negative side of the media obligations towards the end of last year. And you seem to be doing a lot more of this sort of stuff now. And Eddie's always been accessible, but you seem to be doing more personally. How have you found that developing relationship with the media over the last 6 months or so?
Yeah, I don't mind it. It was never. It's not really or it hasn't been my focus. Like I quite like. Although I do a lot of interviews, I'd happily not do a lot of interviews.
Yeah.
And I'd happily just do paperwork and Excel spreadsheets and contracts and numbers. Like that's my little world, and I like that. So for me, I made some mistakes maybe in one interview last year. That was really the first time I get a lot of stick online, but I can take all that. That was the first time where it was like I was going on Twitter and thinking about deleting it and throwing it in the sea. But it's all a learning process, and it's things you have to go through. Everyone's got an opinion on you, and yeah, I don't mind it. But this has never been my reason for being in the business, is to do interviews or to be famous or to be the face. But it's part and parcel now of the job, because Eddie can't be at every media event, or he can't be everywhere. So yeah, it's one of those things, and hopefully I'm getting better. It's one of those things that you only get better with the more you do it, and your mistakes are all recorded. So everything you say that people think's wrong is going to be there forever, and that's the unfortunate truth of it.
Well, let's get back to the business side, more comfortable ground, perhaps. AJ's clearly still a massive attraction worldwide. You've got Conor Benn, hopefully at some point will fight in the UK again. He could be a massive pay-per-view star also. Who else is coming through, in your view, in the Matchroom stable that can be built into that crossover star level?
I think, look, you've still got the current crop as well. The likes of Katie Taylor still delivers massive numbers. We've seen that last year in those two fights, amazing fights against Chantel Cameron. And she's going to be involved in some huge fights this year. I think the likes of Devin Haney, we saw what he did in San Francisco recently. We've had a great relationship with Devin Haney over the years, and he's a real star. We're working on looking at some new signings now as well for the future. And our focus is, we've got over 100 fighters, and it's a hard sport, because you can invest a lot of money and time and effort into people, and it can change in one night. It is the reality of it. But we got some great fighters coming through, and very much focused on building those careers. I always say that it's hard. Who would have thought, when we first signed Tony Bellew and he fought Danny McIntosh, for example, and we had 1,200 people in the Echo Arena for that fight? Who would have thought Tony Bellew would go on to do what he did over the next 8-9 years, end on 3 pay-per-view fights back to back, being in a movie starring Creed? Leigh Wood. Who would have thought, when Leigh Wood got beat, was it 8 years ago, 9 years ago, he would have gone on to selling out arenas back to back, it's such a hard sport to look at today. You can with 1 or 2, but to pick out who those stars are going to be. And that's kind of what makes it exciting as well.
And talking of Leigh Wood, just a quick couple before we go. How close or not is his fight rematch with Josh Warrington for the City Ground in May?
Look, a lot of it's sitting with the club right now. I spoke to them on, I think it was Saturday. I had a call with them. There's been a lot going on. Obviously, football doesn't really stop over the Christmas period, so they've been busy. But it's with them right now to come back on a few bits. When it's the first time, it's not just the first time they would have done a boxing event, but a major event outside of football for a long time. I think they got to take that the weekend after at the City Ground as well. But it's a very different crowd. It's a very different setup, and like I say, when you haven't done an event outside of football for, I think it's something 15, 20 odd years, they haven't done anything. There's a lot of work that goes into it. So that's really sitting with the club right now, but hoping for some news from them this week.
Well, let's hope we get Leigh Wood back for good. But moving on from that, Josh, yeah, thanks, mate. Josh Taylor, Jack Catterall, another rematch in the works. How close are we to that? I spoke to Sam Jones yesterday. He said Jack's agreed his half of the deal. So how close are we to getting Josh over the line?
Yeah, look, obviously conversations ongoing with Top Rank for that fight. I think that fight can be made, and I think it will be. It's not there yet, so don't shoot me if it doesn't get done, but I think we can get there with it. It's a great fight. It's a huge fight. There's a lot of spite between those two. The build up for it will be massive. So I'm very hopeful we can get that done. And it's the fight we want to deliver Jack Catterall as well. You know, when we signed Jack Catterall, he didn't, you know, been messed around a lot is the reality. And he'd had a long time out the ring, sort of 18, 24 months out the ring. And the focus again was activity. He fought in May, then he fought again in October, and now, you know, hopeful for sort of March, April for that fight. And that, you know, a big win for him sets him up for some huge fights in the 140 division.
And of course, you've got Callum Smith going up against Artur Beterbiev. Incredibly difficult fight, but he does have attributes that Beterbiev does not. How do you kind of see that one going?
I think it's a very winnable fight for Callum Smith. It's a hard fight, obviously, but you know, when you look at what he's done since he's been in the light heavyweight division, the stoppages he's had, and look, Beterbiev is a different beast, obviously, to some of the guys, but he's not. You know, we saw, was it 5 years ago, Callum Johnson put Beterbiev down? It was actually on our show, the first show we did with the Zone in Chicago. Callum Johnson dropped Beterbiev, so he's not. You know, he's a brilliant fighter. Very tough, very hard, but he's getting to the latter part of his career as well. And I think, you know, if there's a time Callum Smith, I'm not saying he couldn't have done it before, but I think there's a huge opportunity for Callum Smith on Saturday night. And I think you're going to see a real surprise to many people on Saturday.
Eddie Hearn's apparently visualized it, slip left hook, knockout. Do you have much faith in Eddie's prognostications?
Well, he's obviously a trainer and promoter now, so we'll leave him to it. But I don't know.
Clairvoyant as well, yeah.
I couldn't tell you when to throw a jab or move your feet, so I'm not getting involved in the tactics.
We should definitely do both, but yeah, I'm not sure when either.
Oh, you should. Yeah. That's as much as I can give you.
Me too. Just before I let you go, there was a lot of talk towards the end of the year about Billy Joe Saunders coming back potentially under the Matchroom banner. What's the latest with that? When are we likely to see him?
I think he was very much getting back into training, and he had a lot of work to do because he's been out the ring for a long time. I think it would have been over 2.5 years, maybe now. I think it was May 2021, maybe. Yeah, so over 2.5 years since he last fought. And I know he's very much committed to coming back, but it takes a lot of work when you've been out the ring for that long, and you've got to get it right as well. So there's no point rushing it and making a mistake. I think he's committed to coming back early part of this year, and that's, you know, that's a discussion we'll have. There's massive fights to be made out there for him. You know, and the fight I'd love to see, especially, is the Billy Joe rematch against Eubank Jr. at some point. That's a massive fight. So yeah, I'm very confident we'll see him back this year, and hopefully sooner rather than later.
Great stuff. Frank, really appreciate you taking time out your holiday to join us, and enjoy the rest of it, and we'll see you when you get back.
No worries, mate. Good to chat.